Hello and welcome. My name is Stephanie Adams, and I am a Faculty Development and Coaching Specialist at UAGC. I will be the host of this panel session, Why is Having So Few Educators of Color in the Classroom a Problem for Everyone? By joining us today, you acknowledge that the session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you'd like to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, I am pleased to introduce you Dr. Newton Miller, lead faculty of the Department of Education and Liberal Arts at UAGC. It's all yours.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you are in the world. The last session I was in, we just had a young lady from South Africa. So I don't know where you are in the world. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. Those of you that are coming in. This session today, why is having so few educators of color in the classroom an issue for everyone, was actually sparked out of a kind of a student a demand. So we did a session for students, and then we're doing one for educators as well. So kind of like in this panel, the experts, they're going to talk about, why there's such a low number of people of color serving in K through 20 classrooms across the US. And according to some data that was in one of the journals, Hispanic Journal of Law and Policy, there's been only a small growth of the people of color in the education arena in the last 20 years. Actually, from the time Brown versus Board occurred, that's when we saw a large decline in the number of people of color, especially Black educators here in the United States. So far, the number of Hispanic and Black teachers grew by less than 1% in the last 10 years. And a study by the Pew Research Center, if I'm reading this correctly, in years 2019, 2020, only 21% of K-12 teachers in public schools were people of color, where 16% of that 21% are 7% Black and 9% Hispanic. So these dismal numbers are kind of coming out in research that are showing some different effects on students of color. So we wanted to have a discussion from the educator standpoint. So we have a mixed panel here, where we have a mixed panel. It was I don't even see. Oh, there you go. Dr. Raymond's in. So we have two African-American gentlemen, one that works at a predominantly white institution. We have a K-12 educator, and we have two white females, one at a community college and one who works at a HBCU. So it's a pretty mixed a panel that's going to have some great input on this topic from their different perspectives. So I am going to be taking some great notes and watching this recording. I know myself. So what I'm going to do at this point, how we're going to run this panel, is I'm going to, no one knows who's going to go first. I'm just going to kind of call on someone in their order. They'll introduce themselves, and they'll give us a bite of their expertise. They're going to drop a nugget on us. They're going to drop some pearls of wisdom on us around this topic. So after each of them do that, then we have a couple of questions. If we need the questions, we might just be able to elaborate off of what they say. So I am going to start out with our HBCU instructor. I know she smiled like, I know it was going to be me first, right? But this young lady I met actually in the interview, and she impressed me so much that I asked her to be on the panel. So Dr. Eileen Slayton, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself, say where you are, where you're from, what you're doing, and give us some nuggets. We appreciate that.
Awesome, great, thank you. Good day, my name is Eileen Slayton, and I am a mathematics instructor at Houston Tillotson University in Austin, Texas. Thank you for the invitation to speak and join this important panel discussion today. I appreciate your time. As I was preparing for this week's panel discussion, another discussion happened just by pure chance in my college classroom earlier this week. One of the classes I teach is mathematics for elementary educators. The students are currently in the process of applying for student teaching positions. So as part of this process, students are doing background research and touring potential elementary schools where they want to potentially work in the future. So one student shared her experience earlier this week, and I thought this was particularly interesting considering this panel was coming up. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase what she said in class earlier this week. She said, I toured a school this week. I liked the school, and the faculty that showed me around were very helpful and friendly. The students were also nice, but all the students were Hispanic. I do not want to work with students who do not look like me because I want to be a good role model for my community. She went on to say, I'm African American and I did not have good role models growing up. I want to work where I could be a good role model to students who look like me. I told the student that I admired her determination to be a good role model for her students. As we continued the discussion, I asked her if she thought once she started teaching the students, would she be focused on color or race? She immediately said no, that she would be too busy teaching, preparing, grading, and doing all the things that go along with working in the classroom. So we talked further about the other faculty members that she met, and she felt the faculty would be good mentors and help her develop as a teacher. So I asked about the race of the faculty, and she said the faculty were all races. I told her that great co-workers are something to consider in a working environment, especially in teaching. As teachers, we rely on the support of our fellow teachers quite a bit from day to day. And if she had a good feeling about the faculty members she interacted with, that it might be worth considering teaching at the school. More importantly, I share with her that in my experience of teaching math for 25 years in various schools and at various levels, I do not see color or race. I told her, when I'm teaching, you just become focused on whether the student understands material or not. You also have to face daily needs of students that affect classroom performance. So you deal with things like hunger, lack of sleep, behavior issues, but all of those are experienced by students of all colors. So I'm interested in this. I plan to follow up with this student in the future once she's teaching full time. And I want to ask her this question again. Do you see color or race in the classroom? And I'm really intrigued to see what she's going to say once she is teaching full time. Currently, I'm in a unique position, the opposite of sort of the situation previously described by my student. I am a female professor, white female professor at HBCU. I work with mostly male professors and people of color, and also my students are mainly students of color. So when I was thinking about today, I was considering it from the educator's perspective, and I came up with some questions, and I posed those to some more students that I've been working with. So one question I asked was, just is a student more willing to embrace failure and learn if the educator is of the same color? Or is a student more willing to embrace failure and learn if the educator has made a personal connection with the student, regardless of color? So when I asked students these things, I went about it this way, and I said, is your willingness to embrace failure and learn new things in our classroom affected by the color of my skin? And the students immediately said, no, they're willing to learn new things because I make the math relatable and explain it in a way they can understand. And most importantly, they can tell that I enjoy what I do each day and I am approachable. So I thought that was interesting. So I went with that idea a little more and expanded on it. And I asked the students this question: does having a professor of color affect your performance in any class? And the students again said no, they're more focused on whether the professor is approachable and can relay the material. So with that said, I think it is more important for students to have a broad range of experiences than it is to have educators of the same color. Students may not choose a field of study like mine, math, simply because they have never experienced a career that uses math before. This could be because they just don't know anyone and haven't crossed paths with anyone that might be involved in the profession. So instead of focusing on the color of educators or students, I think all educators, regardless of color, should focus on increasing and expanding experiences that will open doors for all students of all colors. Thank you, and I appreciate your time today. I look forward to hearing what everyone else has to say on the topic as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you for kicking us off and getting us started. I appreciate that. Man, I'm resisting the urge to do follow-up questions. We got to let everyone talk. I'm resisting that urge. So Dr. Adams, I have been waiting to hear from you since we last time we talked in February. So I don't know. Are you able to come on screen so everyone can see you? Is that possible? Or are you in a place? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Jump in. Give us something about you and teach us something about this topic.
Hello everyone. I don't know why my screen is so dark. But I'll try to fix that. Because I'm going between two computers. Well, if I'm understanding your question right, you want me to kind of contribute to the overall question or conversation that just occurred, to like talk about that.
Or give us some pearls. Drop some pearls of wisdom on us. Why is having so few teachers of color an issue for everyone in the classroom? From your perspective.
From my lived experience as in the field of social work and public health, there aren't any Black professors, or a majority of Black professors in those specific disciplines, and it's isolated. So I can't understand what it means to be Black in the social work fields when the person who's teaching me has not had a Black experience. So what I mean by a Black experience is when someone is followed in the store, when someone is, doesn't have accessibility to certain services simply because of race is a barrier. And if you can't understand what those type of things like that occur within those particular disciplines, then you can't reach me. And so for me, from my lived experience, I think that you have to take those factors in and humble yourself in a way to understand that those are experiences that are unique to people of the African diaspora. And that's just from my perspective.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, from the psychological side of things, how about Lisa Bovard? So Lisa's coming to us from a community college, North Carolina, with a TRIO program. And I'm not sure if everyone knows what a TRIO program. So you want to give us a little background on that and kind of some of the stuff you do. And then why do you think it's a problem that we have so few teachers of color in our classrooms?
All right. Well, I love to talk TRIO. So the federal TRIO program, student support services that we have here at Rowan Cabarrus, it's a new program. We're in our third year of the grant cycle. And it is designed to work with students who are low income, first generation to college, and or have a disability. So our students have to meet those one or more of those federal criteria in order to participate in our program. And the entire purpose of our program is to increase graduation rates, retention rates, persistence rates within those populations that traditionally struggle more at a community college level and also at a four-year level. We just happen to be at a community college. So most of the students that I work with are non-traditional students. Many of them have 2 and 3 jobs, most have families. Rowan Cabarrus Community College is the 8th largest community college in North Carolina, and we are split across 2 different counties. So Rowan County has a higher poverty rate, higher unemployment rate, lower education rate than Cabarrus County, but both are below state average and national averages. So kind of to give you a sense of what we're working with. For me personally, yes, I do think that the lack of educators of color in the classroom is a problem for everybody. I know we just sent students to a Black Leadership Conference here a few months ago, and they came back fired up. And one of the questions they asked was, where are minority instructors? Where are they? And they're not here. The college isn't there yet. To have a staff and faculty that's reflective of the student population here. We have about between 35 and 40% minority students here at the college. And they came back fired up, and it got me thinking, you know, my own children, I have 5 children, and I think out of all 5 across all the years of school, they've had a handful, if even, of minority teachers. I know 2 of my children are Asian, and they notice that they don't have other students in the school that look like them. They notice that there are not teachers that look like them. I have a daughter with a disability. She very much notices there's nobody else at that level like her that can relate to her, can understand.
Wow.
So for me, at a community college level, we do a lot with connection with students in a sense of belonging. And I think from what they're telling me, it is difficult for them to feel they belong in a world that doesn't look like theirs, that doesn't look like them. They want that connection to successful minority instructors. They want to feel like they can approach easier to those minority instructors. And I know, just from a personal standpoint, on the flip side of that, I grew up in a very rural area, and I'm talking like rural. We joked 100 if you counted all the Amish, kind of rural.
Wow.
And I know for myself, I would have benefited to have that minority educator in the building and have that exposure and that experience, because I didn't have it. Not, my undergrad was primarily all white. You know, I really didn't get that exposure and that learning until graduate school. And that's a lot of lost years and a lot of lost learning. And without that, I don't think we can break the, isolation isn't the word I want, but I don't think we can break out of that cycle and really start to build connections socially and break down some of these outside of education, even some of these societal area issues that we're having. So
that's good. That's good right there. Maybe Dr. Raymond could chime in on that, but let's slide on over to Mr. Gallen. What are your thoughts, sir?
Me unmute myself. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, and it is a pleasure to be a part of this panel discussion. I have so many thoughts, and you know, to be transparent, you know, Dr. Newt sent out a few sample questions that we may be able to expound upon as we go through this discussion. But you know, the initial thought that came to mind was when I initially read the question was an advanced psych course that I took as a graduate course at Millersville University. Just to give you a little background on myself, I'm a special education teacher. I've been in education for just a little over 20 years. I'm also the head boys basketball coach at my school. Predominantly minority students. Over 70% of our student population receive free or reduced lunch. 30% of our student population receives special education services. I live in an economically depressed area. I am a lifelong Yorker, which is in South Central Pennsylvania, about 50 miles north of Baltimore, 25 miles south of Harrisburg. So I immediately thought about a class that I took. It was called Advanced Ed Psych. And in this course, I was the only male minority student in the class. And the course was designed to take a look at how personal and cultural biases will have an impact on how you deliver your instruction, regardless of your race, religion, gender, sexuality, political views, socioeconomic status. All of these will have an influence on how you deliver your instruction, how you interact with your students, how you relate to your students. You know, that implicit bias can't be avoided. But what you can do is you can be conscious of it. You can be aware. And what happens is when you are not immersed in diverse cultural experiences, when you're in limited spaces, you begin to develop a narrow-minded worldview. And, just to be, frank about it, we've all been groomed most of us have been groomed in a public education arena with a Eurocentric worldview, and as far as how we were taught. And it just made me think of that. And I just started thinking, when you lack exposure to diverse cultures, to diverse teachers, to diverse educators, it's going to make not delivery of instruction harder, so to speak, because, as Dr. Slayton alluded to, you have to make your material relevant. But sometimes that can be hard to make those things relevant when you're limited in the cultural experiences that you've been exposed to. So I took it a step further, and I asked some of my students, what are your thoughts about having so few educators in the classroom? And do you think it's a problem for everyone? And the responses that I got were surprising. Let me go down to some of them. Some of them felt like that, and this is what they said. They said, now, mind you, when I was a student at the school that I'm currently teaching at, we were about 50-50 as far as minority students to the white students. Now it's well over 90% of the students are minority students. We've had a lot of white flight, and we're really a socially economically depressed area. So they feel like white teachers belittle them or speak to them from an elitist attitude. These are the responses that students gave me. They also share that white teachers struggle to look at things from an African American perspective. They also share that that most of their teachers are white, but a lot of their support staff, the hall monitors, the teachers' aides, they are of African American descent or Hispanic. And another perspective that was shared with me was that when a white teacher has a negative interaction with a student of color, they sometimes project and treat similar situations with students of color the same way. So those are just things that students have shared with me, sharing with the group, just something to think about that, and I'm looking forward to taking a deeper dive into the topic, but and hearing what everyone else's thoughts are. But I think it's important. I personally think it's important that students have a well-diverse faculty or staff to be able to pull from a varying degree of experience, social experiences, along with the delivering of whatever instructional materials they're trying to deliver.
Amazing, amazing. Just on a side note, I think I just heard my next study. You might see an article coming up from Clovis Gallen, Newton Miller. You heard what he said. He just did a mini study. Maybe we can see how to expand that a little. I want to take something you said, and I'm going to point it back to Dr. Slayton. So Dr. Slayton is a white female. She teaches at a historically Black college or university. She mentioned that, and when she teaches students. She doesn't see color as she teaches the students. But yet you on the high school level have had your students of color have uncomfortable experiences with some of the educators who are not people of color. So I'm wondering, Dr. Slayton, you being a dedicated and very effective educator with the role reversed, where you are now teaching at HBCU, where my experience at HBCU is majority instructors are also people of color. So I'm not sure what it is at yours. But what does that bring up in your mind? What kind of feelings and what kind of, what would you say to the data that Mr. Gallen just collected from his students?
Well, first of all, I would say I would agree with a lot of what he pointed out. I have 15 years teaching experience at the high school level before I started teaching college. And I witnessed the same thing. A lot of the educators in the classroom at the high school level, and I was at various high schools, not just one, were mainly white educators. But a lot of the what they call paraprofessionals here in Texas, assistants, people who work the hallways, people who are aides and that sort of thing, were mainly people of color. So I have had that experience. The funny thing is, he mentioned, students, if you don't have the experience, I'm kind of in a unique position, I think, because if you don't have the experience, you can't walk that road with your students. To me, math is sort of that thing in the middle, because to me, math is math. The numbers don't care what color you are. and from my perspective, math is equally hated by almost everyone else in the world, except for the rare breeds of people like me who love math. So when I teach, bringing in experiences is a very important thing. But I think to me, it's more students in general have no idea where math is even used. All they know is in their mind, they hate it. They never want to do it. And when I start asking them about, what are you majoring in? What are you planning on doing? And I start telling them, here's the math you're going to be doing every day. Their eyes get really big, because to them, they're not going to do math. They're not going to do math at all. And so, I have students who are criminal justice majors, and I tell them, part of criminal justice is you're going to be analyzing crime rates and where you should be putting your police force and those sorts of things. And it's just, I think, overwhelming to them to see instances that they've never thought of before. So I agree that it is a thing. And I will point out to this too, when I talk to my students about choosing education, because I'm at an HBCU, so all my students are mainly of color. I ask them, if they are majoring in math or anything else, but I focus on math a lot. Why aren't you choosing education? Why aren't you getting your teaching certificate? And the bottom line is money. I mean, they can make six figures, $150,000 plus, using their math degree in industry. And in the state of Texas, on average, you're going to make about $45,000 to $50,000 being a teacher. Right. So when I ask them why, it's flat out money. It's not really anything else. It's just, and especially now, if they're taking out student loans, they're like, I'm not going to take out all these student loans and be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and go to work for $40,000 when I'm done. They're like, I'm getting my degree so I can make money. Right. And so that's what I'm saying. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that input and taking that on the run. That wasn't part of the plan. Listen, I want to put a question out to all of you, unless anyone has anything to say before I ask a question, because a lot of nuggets were dropped from all of you. No, okay. So this is more along the teacher preparation. And I think it's a good flow from kind of what Mr. Gallen and Dr. Slayton just said. So in your opinion, well, not in your opinion, the fact is there's a low number of certified educators of color here in these United States. So in your opinion, are there any barriers in our teacher preparation programs and in our state certification systems that kind of impede the process or the progress of people of color who desire to be teachers of certified teachers? Is there anything in the place that you think is kind of stopping that?
So I don't know if you can hear me. It's like an echo. Sorry about that.
I think he had two devices up. Looks like he's getting them straight, muting one, muting the other.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Can y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
So for me, like here in the state of Alabama, and I work in the Department of Education and Human Behavior, and I work closely with educators. And one of the things here in Alabama, they have lessened the score for certification, for teacher certification, because of the way in which that is a barrier for students to actually go into the classroom, because a lot of them cannot pass the state board certification exam because of the high score. Same thing with the licensing for social workers. In order for you to be practicing as a social work therapist, you need to make a certain score. And data has come out showing that these exams are biased. So that's a main barrier. You have several students of color who want to teach in the public school system, but they cannot, simply because they cannot pass a test that is not a true determinant of their qualifications of being a good teacher. Same thing with social work education. We pump out several master level social workers who want to go in and do the real work, but they can't get past the test because that barrier is determining whether or not they can get a job, determining whether or not they will even get an interview, and determining whether or not they even want to stay within the field in which they went to school and accumulated student loan debt for. So for me, you can't take a institutional or structural colorblind frame to looking at that. If they can't get past that one barrier, people get disenchanted and they don't go, and they move on to other disciplines.
Right.
So that to me suggests that we need to reimagine a new way of understanding knowledge acquisition. So I'm all for, if you go to school for 4 years to get your undergraduate, and then two plus years in order to get your graduate degree, you do all of these internships and you do all of these certifications, there has to be some other way that we can reimagine saying that we have done the necessary hours in order to be qualified to be practitioners. So that's for me. That's one barrier that I think is the issue.
I think that you'll find some great agreement. I'm pointing to you like we're in the same classroom.
I just want to piggyback on what Dr. Adams was speaking to. I'm in full agreement with that. And just, I want to add the second layer to that is, it would be in the best interest of states to maybe have like a graduated process where maybe if you don't meet the score requirement to receive your state certification in whatever field, that maybe you have to do some sort of, I know we already do student teaching here in the state of Pennsylvania, but maybe you have to go through a practice for 6 months or 3 months, or to showcase you implementing multiple lessons, you developing some common assessments to assess a particular subject, you delivering an instructional model. Maybe you have to show a video of yourself to the state and show what that would look like. I don't know what the framework would be, but it would be in the best interest of states to develop a framework like that to go along with that state, so the already in place state certification process, in order to, because everyone is not a good test taker. Some people, go into a test taking situation and may just freeze up. And no matter how much studying they do, no matter how much they practice the material, when it comes to being able to go take an assessment, they may never do well. But to be able to go put in practice what it is that they learned, you may be able to see something that you weren't expecting to see.
And not to take over this conversation, but I see a question in the chat in regards to about data and color. So I'm going to give from the CSW, which is the Council of Social Work Education. So going back to the point I was making in regards to, in order for us, like for example, social workers who have a master's or even a practice doctorate, in order for us to do therapy, we have to have a license, either at the master's level or at the clinical level. And data has come out showing that the people who administer our tests, which is the Association of Social Work, the Social Work Board, has shown that a disproportionate number of Black and brown social workers failed that test, the master's and clinical test, by a higher margin than their non-African American counterparts. So that means that, for example, here in the state of Alabama, if you get a score between a 90 and 100, when the exam is 170 questions, 20 of those questions are going to be test questions. And when at the end of the test, you get less than the required mark, you have to retake that test. And the test is expensive. Let's stop playing games. Students don't have money. I wouldn't spend $300 each time to take a test. That's a light bill, rent, food, clothes on children's back. I would say F it too. Right. So when we think about barriers, we have to think that testing is a barrier. You have to think about the fact that institutions sometimes place barriers. When you don't see people of color representing those statistics, why would you go and contribute your own hard-earned money to fight to get in a space where you're not necessarily welcomed or encouraged to remain in? So that's how you match color with data. Data doesn't lie. Data don't lie. So if you don't see an exorbitant amount of people in that particular data, and if it's disproportionately colored, then that's how you see data in color.
Love it, love it. There's a long chat in there. I'll come back to that one a little later, Dr. Raymond. I don't know, Lisa, do you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, if I can real quick, because mentioning testing fees and so on, that is a barrier. That is something that we see here at the community college level for things, even applications to schools, to colleges, to transfer from a 2-year to a 4-year, where application fees are a barrier. So I definitely think they're nailing it. I mean, testing is biased, period. It is. Fees are a barrier. One thing that I work with a lot is the imposter syndrome, where students really don't see themselves as students. They don't see themselves as professional, scholarly. And I have to wonder how much of that is a learned understanding of themselves from the K-12 level, where data has shown you don't have as many minorities placed into AP classes. You don't have as many minorities placed into college prep tracks. My question is, how much of that is playing into not having the minorities into the education programs? They don't see themselves as that professional level, along with the financial barriers, the testing barriers, and so on.
Love that. Love that. That's a phenomenon called absenteeism, which there are some studies behind that as well. If you don't see it, then you don't think you can be it. I'm paraphrasing it, of course, but that is one of the issues, especially coming from an urban arena like Mr. Gallen. If our students don't see certain attainment or accomplishments, then it's hard for them to even think that is even possible for them. I want to move to this could be a real long conversation, but I want to move to another question because I wanted to touch on the barriers first, but I want to come back on this, and I'm going to pick on you, Lisa, to lead off on this one, because your position as the TRIO coordinator, you get to step back from the classroom, if you will. You get a wider view. So that's why I want to start with you. So in your opinion, concerning educators and students of the majority population, right? What, if any, advantages occur when there's a diverse group of educators of color serving at that same institution? So I read what I wrote. Let me paraphrase it for you to give you time to think about it. So when you're looking at it from the perspective of folks from a majority population, non-white educators and students, what advantage do they get out of having a diverse group of educators serving at the same university where they happen to be?
Every advantage. Literally, they get every advantage. Like I said, for me personally, not having had the advantage of that put me at a disadvantage when I came out into a bigger world outside of Warren County, Pennsylvania, which you would be familiar with. Clovis has There's nothing there. Like there's nothing, stagnant, zero minority population and so on. That put me at a huge disadvantage when I came into the University of Cincinnati, for example. I think the advantage for a non-minority population is exposure, experience, and the learning, period.
Wow.
You know, I'm a language teacher. So for me, cultural diversity is huge. Getting to know others is huge. And if you sit in a school that is all white, all the students are white, all your staff is white, how do you ever learn otherwise? Does that make any sense? Like there's a bigger world out there. So to me, it's an advantage all the way around.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Go ahead, sir.
Mind jumping in here. I received a phone call Sunday evening, random phone call out of the blue from someone who lives in Southern York County. Southern York County is a rural area. It's about 20 miles away from where I live. Southern York County School District, Susquehannock High School. The parent was a white woman that called me. She reached out because she got my contact information because she is married to an African-American man. So their daughter is a biracial student in this school district. And she began to share with me the racial challenges that her daughter has been sharing with her over, through their experience of living in that community. Some of the students were saying things to her like, look at the white girl with the dirty perm. I mean, just malicious things. The daughter took the initiative. The student took the initiative to reach out. She did everything right. She didn't lash out at anyone. She didn't do anything inappropriate. She reached out to her teachers. She reached out to the school principal, to all the way to the highest level, to the superintendent, to the school board. She made a presentation to them. Some of the students that were engaging in these behaviors, these malicious behaviors, were disciplined. Well, she began to broadcast her experience out on social media, and Joanne Trumper Mulholland, who is the first white woman who is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, picked up on what was going on. She began to engage her, and she talked her into coming into the Southern York County community to speak to the people, to speak to the staff, to speak to the community about the civil rights movement, to talk to them about diversifying their staff, to talk to them about what it means for what those experiences how those experiences are influencing the student. The school board voted against having Joanne Trumper Mulholland come in. She's a white woman coming into the school and to speak to the student body, to speak to the community. They said, we don't want CRT here. We don't want. She's a supporter of Black Lives Matter. Now, mind you, she worked very closely with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She was in on a sit-in. She worked with Medgar Evers. Her son is Loki Muhammad, who is also a white male who is a member of my fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. They are both coming to the York area this weekend they're coming to Small Memorial AME Zion Church to speak, and they're going to speak in a local church in that Southern York County area this weekend. But I only bring this up to say that Southern York County, rural, very a staff that is not diverse at all, and they want no parts of that. They want no parts of her coming in. They want no parts of, we don't want, to quote what the mother said, who was a white woman, they said, we don't want your wokeism here. So I think it's imperative that once you begin to incorporate people and expose people to diverse cultures, you get exposed to other, you begin to widen your perspective, you begin to widen your worldview, you become more educated, and you become more at ease with what it is, those relationships that you build, and you just open up your mindset, and it makes for a better community for everyone.
I love that. I love that.
Can I follow up on that real quick, Dr. Miller?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sitting here going, because I swear you're talking about my district I grew up in Northwestern PA. And I think part of the problem with that is you end up with teachers from those same communities. they stay in those communities, and then you end up with very tight, isolated mentalities, and that don't want change. Change becomes a bad word. And I think exactly what he's saying, unless you have that diversity available to all, we're going to end up to continue to have these isolated, very tight, not expanded mindsets. I've had conversations. I have a lot of relatives that are still there, and most of my relatives teach. And when it comes to talking about history or, talking about the taking statues down and so on, well, the comment is, I don't know anybody that's offended by that. I don't understand why. Because you've never talked to anybody, because you've never been outside of Northwestern PA, Southwestern New York State. But that's exactly the same grounds where we're pulling those educators from for those schools. So it becomes this vicious cycle.
Love it. I don't know, Eileen, did you want to jump in on that, or do you want me to move on?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to say it really does go back to experience. And on the previous one, I was going to add in on the educator one, I don't think we put our future teachers in the classroom soon enough. So like I said, I teach this math for elementary educators course, and they've been in school for multiple semesters and have not gone to observe a classroom yet. And I think that's a disservice. I think if we're going to build more educators and recruit in the field, that their very first semester on campus, they should be in classrooms. And to me, that helps connect a lot of what they're doing. So we're talking about testing issues. They haven't seen the things they're learning in practice. So we talk about Bloom's taxonomy and all these other educational things. They haven't ever experienced actually being in practice in the classroom. So I think the sooner we can get them in the classroom, the more they can solidify those concepts so that when they get to the testing phase, it's not just some random thing they've read in a book. They've actually seen it and practiced and been a part of it. But I think what my overwhelming take from all of this, what everyone's saying, is just experience. So the more experiences we can bring, and I'm not set on it being a color per se situation, but just experiences in general.
Yes.
Like some of the people I work with are from Turkey and Iran and Mexico. I mean, we have like this diverse population, but it's that type of experience that they're bringing. So, but this is an intriguing conversation, so I'm glad I'm part of it. But that's all I have to add so far.
Love it. Let me switch gears a little bit. Because we can, I'm watching chat, and there's a couple of places we could go, but I'm going to read. This is a long one, so I'm going to read it. And just anyone kind of jump in. So on the K-12 level, the data says that 28% of the teachers are people of color across the nation. And the number of Black and brown students being suspended from school is staggeringly disproportionate to the number of white students. But in higher education arena across the country, only 20% of the full-time faculty are people of color, and Black students have the lowest graduation rates, 46% in public institutions and 57% in private institutions. Additionally, Black men have the highest dropout rates and the greatest percentage of those instances occurring as undergraduate freshmen. Now, do you think that these implied correlations are valid or even fair? Why or why not? Give you some time to think. K-12, low number of people of color as educators. We see a high number of suspensions and dropout rates. And on the higher ed, low number of full-time faculty. We see a higher dropout rate with people of color. Is there any correlation between them? It's an implied correlation. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that there's a link between those two? And if you do, why or why not? I know when no one's done the study. No one wants to step out on the limb.
I'll step out. I mean,
Okay, I was gonna say, I don't know if you go ahead and I'll go
okay.
after
I
you.
mean,
Go ahead.
there are a lot of layers to the question.
Yes.
You know, as before mentioned, Dr. Newt did put out some feeler questions in an email, and I began to expound upon this one. This is one that I haven't developed as well as the others, but I can say that you know, the amount of representation of people of color in teaching positions at an institution definitely matter, because when you think about, and I can only speak to my experience, but I think about the amount of concentrated poverty that's here. I think about other factors such as school funding, the amount of leverage in programs that students have access to, the amount of identified students in districts are all factors. So when I think about those correlations, yes, they're valid. I don't know if I could say if they're fair or unfair. Because when you think about the amount, like I look at the teachers that are here, on some level, we because I'm a part of that, I'm a part of this faculty here. I may not face some of the same challenges and issues that all of the other faculty members are facing, but we as a collective group are struggling to find ways to get our student population to value their education. Because of various factors, external factors, environmental factors, issues from the home, issues in the community. They don't see their why in regards to why education is so valuable. And it blows my mind, because I sat in the classroom that I'm sitting in right now was my 9th grade civics classroom. And the mindset that I had walking into the school and what I thought education was going to be able to do for me doesn't carry with a large part of the population of students that I currently serve here. So when they walk into, and then when they go into higher ed, yeah, a lot of the students that I coach go on to post-secondary education. Students that I've serviced go on to post-secondary education. They struggle because some of them didn't view their K-12 experience and didn't dive in and really learn how to study, didn't really learn how to budget their time, didn't learn how to really value the experiences and the relationships that they're supposed to build with their professors when they go on to the next level. They get there and they don't have quality study habits. They don't have good sleep habits. They don't have self-discipline, and they end up dropping out. So there is a correlation between all of those factors. And this one question is something that we can dive into and have a discussion about for the next few hours. But there's a lot of meat to that. There's a lot of substance. I'm interested to hear what other people think about the topic.
Sure, and I'll jump in too, from having, like I said, 15 years experience at the high school level. I will say this: by the time they get to the high school, it's too late. So we see a lot of intervention plans and stuff coming in like that point at the high school level, you know, because we're trying to avoid the dropout rate. But at that point, it's too late. I mean, they can't reach them. They can't get them to change their ways. And talking about the number of suspensions, to me, the number is not high enough across the board. We are allowing the worst behavior I've ever seen in my teaching experience to take place. When I started teaching, okay, I want to say now 25 years ago, really quietly, because it's a really big number, but 25 years ago, this stuff didn't occur. I mean, teachers are being beat up, stuff's being thrown at them, and nothing happens to the child, okay? And so we have an issue. And if you wait till the high school level, you're done. I mean, these students are lost. You hate to give up on any of them, but I'm telling you from my perspective, by the time they get to be 16 years old, you're done for. There's no turning that train around. I mean, they are on a path that is going to take a lot of what I call God's intervention to get them back around. So to me, it's at the younger ages, and we need a higher suspension rate. We need a higher, like, this is just not allowed type of thing, like setting the pace, setting the expectations. Because in my teaching experience, I'll tell you, the students will rise or fall to whatever standard you set. So if we let that behavior go on in kindergarten and in first grade and in second grade, it just gets worse, and there's no turning it back. The other piece of that puzzle that I am a big advocate for is a mentor program. A lot of times at the high school level, I would ask students, who is your person? It doesn't have to be a mom or a dad, but a lot of the students years ago would at least have a pastor. They would have a coach. They would have somebody, an uncle in their life. Now these kids are just lost. There's so many that just don't even have a person that they can identify with. That is like, if something great happens for you, who could I call to tell them these great things? And they have no one. So I think it's a twofold thing, like really hammering on the discipline early on in the classroom, but having that piece where there's some sort of mentor program, a support program. Every student has a someone, if they don't have a parent type person already. And when you see that change in discipline, the learning is almost automatic. They start learning. And if they start learning at the young age, they're going to continue learning, and they're going to know that's what they're supposed to be doing. So by the time they get to the high school level, that's their normal. Their normal is not, hey, let's beat up the teacher and cause a total disaster for the whole rest of the classroom and no one's learning. That's my say on it.
So you opened up several cans of worms. You opened up a can of worms about discipline and suspension rates, and you opened up a can of worm about it's too late. So and we have 4 minutes. And I do want to give some folks I really wanted to ask Dr. Raymond to jump in on something. I mean, Dr. Adams to jump in on something. So, but let's kind of clear this up so that we can get everyone to have an understanding. So we're talking about higher suspension rates. And I saw Clovis, who's also in high school, kind of agree with the out of control behavior, if you will. What exactly do we mean by that? Do we just mean suspend more people, or you saying hold folks accountable? What?
I think we have to find creative ways to hold students accountable.
Okay.
We have an issue with leverage at the high school. We are resorting to punitive measures of discipline or restorative practices where I don't even want to go into that. I personally believe that we need to, every once in a while, I'll take a dive into my high school yearbook and I look at how many programs were available, what was available to me as a high school student, the amount of clubs, the amount of student activities. The school facility was open from 7 a.m. until 8, 9 at night. There was something going on. We have one high school in my district. There's a population of 44,000. The city is 4 miles by 2 miles. And there was just always something to do in the building, whether it was the winter dance, you name it, there was just something going on. We need to have, and the kids have a sense of belonging. They want to be a part of something. And I think about this kid. This was one of my case studies. He was on my caseload a few years ago. He is a high school dropout, but he was at everything. He didn't miss a football game. He didn't miss a basketball game. He would go to the school plays. He was at every event. The kid would paint his face and lead the pep rally at school. But he was a habitual hall walker. He didn't take his academics seriously. Smart kid. We didn't use the measures of leverage that we had over him. Guess what? If you don't go to class and you don't perform at this level, we're not going to allow you to go to the game. We're not going to allow you to go to the homecoming dance. We're not going to allow you to be a part of this. We're not going to allow you to play on your intramural flag football team. Those are the things that we aren't doing that we can do. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot by investing too much on the back end with restorative practices, with alternative education measures, and we're not doing enough on the front end. And if we do more on the front end, I wrote a plan, by the way, Dr. Miller. If we do more on the front end, we won't have these issues.
Got it. So I need to kind of wrap up. We have a minute or so left, and I do want to give. We could point these back to Dr. Adams to get some perspective on the psychosocial connection between accountability and all those things that are going on. But let me kind of say it like this. So in this culture of diversity, equity, inclusion, and awareness, creating programs and focusing resources to create more teachers of color can be interpreted as an exclusion of non-minority educators. So let's pretend for a moment that you have an opportunity to speak to 1,000 white educators who feel that the push to prepare and recruit more educators of color is an act of exclusion towards them. What would at least one talking point be for your conversation with them? Can I get one person to answer that, and we've got to go? What would you say?
For me, I think, first of all, every teacher I know complains about the teacher shortage, how overworked they are. There aren't enough. How in the world is training and bringing in more qualified professionals a problem? Like, that just blows my mind to start with. But I think for me, the main thing would be, why wouldn't you want these folks? Why wouldn't you want more minority educators? Where's the harm in? I guess I struggle to see where the issue would be with that. There's always something to be learned from my perspective when you have diversity. This is probably what my point would be. Like, I just can't. I don't get it.
Okay. So I was responding actually to Ramona, exactly what she was saying in the chat. As you can see it, that's why I wanted Dr. Raymond to chime in from a psychological perspective. But we're at time. Thank you for being so engaging in the chat. Thank you for sticking on, all of you that stuck on for the time that you did. This is a tough, difficult conversation. Again, we're just cracking open the jar. There's a lot more that can be said and a lot more that can be done. Thank you for your time. Hopefully you grabbed some nugget from these panelists. If there's anything you'd like to know from any other panelists, please feel free to contact me. I can relay that message to them, and I'm sure they'll get back to you as soon as they possibly can. Hey, make it a great day or not, because that choice is always yours. Have a good one.